everyone. I am Ashley Easter, and welcome to Courage Conversations. I am the executive director of Courage 365, and this is a show all about empowering survivors. I am so excited to have a wonderful guest on today. His name is Brian Metzger, and he's a pastor. Now, I know some of you are thinking, Ashley, why is there a pastor on this show? Let me tell you, this is one of the few pastors that I feel really, really comfortable with, that I really trust. And I have seen over the years how he has supported survivors, how he has talked about abuse and cover up, not only in the church at large, but in his own denomination. And he is one of the good ones. And so I wanted to bring him on the show today to be able to talk about some of his perspective from someone inside the church, to be able to talk about some of the ways pastors and church leaders respond to abuse ineffectively, what we can do to change that, and what his vision is for a safe future. So without further ado, I want to invite and introduce to you Brian Metzger. Hey, Brian, welcome to the
Hi.
show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
I am just really excited. I feel like it's been forever since we've actually talked. I want to say the last time I saw you in person was before the pandemic, I think.
Yeah, I think
Um,
so. Yeah.
yeah.
Pandemic's really messed up my sense of time altogether, but
Same
yeah.
here. It feels like we entered like a new age, a new era.
Yeah.
But yeah, super excited to have you on the show. So, Brian, like I said in the introduction, you're one of the few clergy members that I feel like you get it. I love the way you always are open to your congregation asking questions. I see the different things you've posted on your social about, hey, we're having group discussion on things. It just seems so much more honest and authentic and safe. And so I'm really honored that you'd be on the show. And I wanted to ask if you would tell us a little bit about you and how caring for survivors, how that is important to you, why that is important to you as a clergy member.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for having me here for this conversation. And it's a little surreal being in a thing that I normally am watching. So I'm not sure how that's gonna work when I watch what I'm doing. But I've been in ministry now for about 35 years. And I think the thing that has made the difference for me first would just be the relationships that I have with people in my life, people I am close to who are survivors and who have shared the pain of their stories with me and have also shared with me the journey of healing and recovery and all the things that come along with that. And then that has just led, I think, over time for me to be able to understand that there are people who have these stories of really incredibly painful things that have happened to them, things that they were never looking for, things that they never deserved, and then sadly oftentimes came to the church looking for help, looking for empathy, looking for love, and found the opposite, found the church to be a place where we don't want to hear about these things, particularly when they were things that happened to somebody through other church members or clergy being the absolute worst. And so that's broken my heart for people over time, that the original pain, but then they've survived that only then to land in what should be a healing community, a hopeful community, and then find all their pain doubled or tripled, and then even sometimes find themselves blamed for what happened to them. And so that over time has really has got me stirred up, and then it's just led me into contact friendships with lots of people then who are survivors, and then that just multiplies things as I hear their stories, and then that just naturally flows into the kind of church that we want to be. If I'm going to continue to be a pastor, then the church that I'm a part of needs to be a place that's as safe as we can possibly be, and a place that honors survivors, and a place that makes room for their stories and is honest about our own stuff, doesn't try to cover up, manipulate, try to put on a fake face about how things really are.
That's really powerful. And I think it's interesting how your response, and I think it speaks to your character, your response when hearing the stories of survivors has very much been, wow, that's a really hard thing. I'm sorry that happened to you. And I wish the church was a better support. But so many times I hear of pastors who have heard the same stories and their reaction is so different. And that kind of leads me into this next question that I have here. And it's I've seen you consistently speak up about abuse and even talking about abuse in the denomination you're with, and just not being afraid to do that because of honesty and really caring, and like you said, wanting to create safe spaces. But I'd like to talk about the myth of the greater good.
Yeah.
And in our pre interview work, you mentioned the greater good idea and how church sometimes is misguided, sometimes it's evil attempts outright to silence victims and to protect abusers.
Yeah.
And, can you just talk a little bit about like what this myth of the greater good is around survivors and silencing them, why you think some pastors believe that and why you feel differently?
Yeah, I think that there are lots of given reasons why we make those claims for the greater good. I think a lot of times at the bottom of it is just that we're really uncomfortable with those conversations. Sometimes we have our own dirty little secrets, and to even start a conversation means those might come out. And so there's a self-preservation part of that. But it's all rotten. It's all terrible stuff. And long before Me Too and Church Too, in my experience in the church, we were always encouraged to only share a good testimony. Don't talk about bad things that have happened. Don't talk about how prayers didn't get answered. Don't talk about struggles that you're having, because somebody who's looking for Jesus might hear those things and then decide they don't want to follow Jesus. And these are like, they're nonsensical. They're not, even for people who are committed to reading the scriptures. You have books like Ecclesiastes. You've got horrible stories of sexual abuse and incest and adultery and rape by main characters in the Bible. And so you would think, as people who will so staunchly defend the Bible and knowing what the Bible says, we wouldn't pull back from those things, but we do. And for some of us, I know, as pastors, it really feels like it threatens our livelihood if we bring out into the light that we've got a youth worker or a children's ministry person or the senior pastor who's done some kind of abusive or sexually abusive thing. Then we're afraid, what is that going to do to the church? People will leave, everything's going to fall apart. And there's so much enmeshment in the church that we've got not only a relationship with God, but a relationship with other people, and our sense of our eternal destiny, and sometimes our finances, like all these things so intertwined that we're afraid to pull on that one string that we really know we really should be pulling on that, but the whole thing's going to come undone. And I say, let it come undone. We're protecting the wrong things. That if everything comes apart because we're protecting someone who has been abused, then for the love of God, let it all come apart, because it's not the right thing anyway. And so, it's, to me, we've just really tried to control things that I think God would rather see those things fall apart, if in fact they would really fall apart. I personally believe that sometimes they will, because things are built on really shaky ground. But I think other times, it's been my experience in communities I've been a part of, that when we're honest about it and we make room for people to share their stories, and when we own the harm that's been done to people and we repent and confess of those things that we've done to other people, that we might lose some people who are maybe hiding some secrets or uncomfortable hearing about those things. But in the end, we are going to have a healthier community. In the end, we're going to have a safer space. And I think church probably will never be a safe space in that anybody can come to church. So it always takes courage to go to church, but we can make safer spaces. And I think that's worth the pain of whatever the pain might be in being honest and coming alongside those people who've been abused. And part of that, honestly, and I think maybe the hardest part for some of us is we've built these really abusive systems, as you've talked about and had guests on your show, the whole purity culture and things that we've doubled down on, toxic masculinity in the church, these really horrible things that weren't just side things, but they were features of the church at different times. And we made a great big deal about them while they wounded people and hurt people and even led people to commit suicide. Like we're complicit in some really horrible things. We'll never get better if we don't talk about these things, if we don't own these things, if we don't recognize the reality of this. And I remember the first conference that you did here in Raleigh that I attended, and listening to the stories of people there, just devastating, listening to how people had been shamed in the church and made to feel like they were the problem because of how they dressed in a church service. Like, how messed up is that? And if we're thinking it's for the greater good to continue to perpetuate that kind of culture, then we have lost a sense of what good is. And so I want the beloved community. I want what I read about, what I've heard about, what I feel like Jesus came to be about. And that's owning our stuff, being realistic about it. And sometimes it means, like, what I need to do right now is just shutting our mouths and listening and just being quiet.
Wow. There were so many mic drop moments there, I felt, and I feel like that's so encouraging, and I think a lot of people, whether they're still in the church or not, when they hear that, I think that it's gonna be really healing to hear that
Hmm.
from a pastor, because so many of us are so used to the other perspective of, "Let's cover it up," like you said, that this ball of things all intertwined, and if we pull the string, it's all gonna fall apart, but like you said, sometimes it's meant to fall apart.
Yeah.
And sometimes it won't fall apart if it actually has a good foundation, if there's good there. I think that's really just really helpful to hear that. And one of the things that always stands out to me, and I'm not sure if we've had a conversation on the show about it before, but the way finances are intertwined in the whole thing, I think the system is messed up in a lot of ways, and I don't know if there's a way to fix it, because people who are doing good work, ministering to people, deserve to be able to make a living. But at the same time, we see with so many of these abusive churches that it's like, okay, if we speak up about abuse, there might be people that leave, which means there's less ties, which means there's less money, which means there's no salary. And it's so interesting how all that's intertwined, and it comes down to people's beliefs in what is security and where they're putting their security. And
That's
often it's
exactly
not security in a belief in a better world, but it's security in, like, how am I going to continue to amass wealth? And
That's right. Exactly. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. How do I keep my stuff?
Exactly, exactly. So, as we've established, the church has failed to support thousands of victims of abuse.
Yeah.
When I say the church as a whole, and in some cases, in many cases, there's even been perpetration of abuse by churches and church leaders. And I've heard you speak about this idea of reparations. And I
Yes.
wondered if you could talk about the concept of reparations. Some people might have heard that maybe in the context of civil rights, and that means one thing. But what does reparations look like in the church? What is that? And particularly, what could reparations look like for victims and their families if it was done well? And why do you think the church seems so resistant? So a bunch of questions as a whole,
Yeah,
but I want to get like your stream of thought with all
sure.
this.
Yeah, I think reparations is what takes us beyond thoughts and prayers. That easy sort of response that the church has become so practiced at, where we can look at horrific things that happen and we just slap thoughts and prayers onto it as if that's enough, or as if it's anything, really. And oftentimes it really means we don't want to have to think or pray about it, is what we really mean. But or at least that's what I mean sometimes when I say it. But I think that reparations are like a tangible, use a Bible word, tangible repentance. It's the proof in the pudding. It's the way of demonstrating that we're going to put our money where our mouth is, that this is like something that we not only believe was wrong, but we've benefited from this in some way, and we want to now take the resources that we have financially, but other resources that we have, and be able to extend those to the people who have been victims, people who are survivors, to their families, the best that we can. And I think the first kind of reparation, or the first step, is really creating listening spaces so that survivors themselves can define for us what that reparation needs to look like, or to use a recovery term, amends. What can we do to make amends, and let them define for us, instead of us conjuring up in our heads, oh, this is what they're looking for, oh, this is what they want. And I've been in situations with people before where people think, oh, they're going to come and they're going to sue the church and they want to take our building away. And then the people who've been wronged, they just say, I'm just looking for a letter of apology. Like, that's all I want. Just tell me you're sorry. And that seems to be so hard to give, but it shouldn't be. So I think that there needs to be definition by those who are survivors of abuse, to define for us what would say to you that we really are invested in seeing your healing, you being well, and letting you know that we acknowledge that we have done you harm. We've been a part of a community that has done harm to you, and we want we can't take away what's been done, but we can let you know that we really do care deeply about it. And then I do think sometimes it can be anything from taking on responsibility for counseling bills, for therapy expenses that are associated, that people may have in short time or long term, but we own those things, particularly if it happened in a local church. We just own that and we take responsibility for it. It could be just anything like that. For some people, it would be like, honestly, I think it could be like sabbatical, or like an extended time away for a kind of therapeutic vacation holiday space where they can just have a safe spot where they can reflect and recharge and get some healing. I just think there are lots of possible ways that we can engage. But I think the essential thing is that we listen and then we do something, and not just stick words on it or just offer the suggestion of prayers.
Wow. Again, very refreshing to hear. And as I'm thinking through all of that, I love how you want to center the survivors' voices in the conversation of reparation, because so many times reparations of any kind are often like, okay, we've come up with our best ideas of how we can fix what we
Right.
broke.
That's right.
Maybe you should ask somebody who's actually had something harm them what they'd actually want. And I think that church abuse would be taken a lot more seriously if churches were required to do some sort of a
Yeah,
reparation. Now, I don't think
I agree.
that's going to happen, but if it really was like I'm thinking of these mega churches where there's so many people who've been abused, and these mega churches are raking in millions and millions of dollars. And if they were actually required to then set a line item in their
That's
budget for all of that, Again, going back to our previous conversation about how money is often tied in, I think
Yeah.
we'd see some changes pretty quick just out of self-preservation.
Yep, I think you're right, for sure.
So I feel like reparations almost work both ways,
Yep.
even if certain churches don't have the correct motivations. Now, hearing from you, I love kind of the motivation of it's like, how can we support those who have been hurt? How can we give them things that they want and not create an extra burden for them? I know if someone had paid for my therapy, like that would have freed up a lot of money in the budget to be able to do other things that, you know, were healing tools for and for so it's interesting how a lot of those things can be very practical. Sometimes you said it's just some people want a letter of an apology, like an outright no excuses apology. Other people are like,
Yes.
"Hey, I could really use some help in this healing journey of getting my bills paid for this
Yeah.
therapy appointment." A lot of these are really practical, and I have dreams that the church would one day offer those things. I've gotta be honest, I have a lot of skepticism. And so not holding my breath, but
We've earned that skepticism for sure. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay, I'm wondering if you had an opportunity, like you were sitting across the table from some religious institutions, representatives of, and we're not gonna name names, but just like generally speaking, if there was like a group of pastors, church leaders, co-conspirators of perpetrating abuse, covering up abuse, people who've harmed victims, like what would be the thing that would come to your mind to say to them if you could get one message across to them?
If I was talking to church leaders, I would say, please be more Jesus-y. Please, please stop compounding people's abuse. Please exercise empathy and understanding. Stop trying to protect yourself and try to protect others. I would say, please release everybody and never ask anybody again to ever sign a non disclosure agreement. Burn every NDA that you've ever had, burn every covenant you've ever made people sign in order to belong to the church. Just eliminate any of these artificial means by which we seek to control people and protect ourselves or protect the institution, and just step up and take responsibility for the harm that we've done. It's not a mystery, it's not a secret, it's not, at this point it's not like something that we just don't know how this happened or where these things came from. We've perpetrated and perpetuated a system, and we need to take responsibility for that and quit hiding. And whatever the consequences that come along, we will never be wrong doing the right thing for survivors. And if that's not enough to see God move to do whatever we think God should be doing for the church, he's not going to be doing it because we've covered things up. Not going to be doing it because we've somehow, quote unquote, protected the church. That's, let God protect the church and we'll tell the truth. Let's do that.
Wow. That's really powerful. I would love to see their faces in that moment and hope there would
Yeah.
be change. The very least, I'd love to see their faces. And then turning the question about if you were to talk to victims and people who've been harmed by these institutions, what's something that you would say to them?
I am so sorry. You deserve to be angry, and there's no excuse for what's happened to you. There's no words that are enough to justify things or to try to smooth things out or make things better. What happened to you was wrong. It was wrong from a system that was perpetrated primarily by men to have power over women and power over other people. It was wrong in just every way that we knew that we were taking advantage and we were creating systems to take advantage. And I confess that as a pastor that we've made these unhealthy, unholy systems, and it's just 100% wrong. And that my desire for you, my hope for you is that you find hope and healing with safe people in reliable communities where you have found acceptance, where you have found people who share your suffering. I hope that someday, if not now, someday that is what you would find within a church community. But God does not hold you responsible. God does not think you should be forcing yourself into those communities. God does not judge you or think less of you because you seek out safe spaces. God wants you to be safe. And God just wants the church to become that kind of a space. And so I won't even, while we desperately need to be forgiven, I would not even venture to ask for forgiveness, because that's putting something on to survivors that, again, they shouldn't be asked to carry. We should demonstrate that we have changed and that we're people who love and where people can find love.
Wow. That's damn, that makes me want to cry. Thank you for that. I really do believe that a lot of people listening, that's the first time they've heard anything like that, especially coming from a pastor. And so I want to thank you. Thank you
Mm,
for it. Yeah. And the last question, one we love to ask everybody who comes on our show is, what does courage mean to you?
mm. I think courage to me is, go with me for a second on this, but it's like pain. It's a thing that we experience in our particularity. For some people, they look at their pain and judge other people by, the pain they say they've been through. And I think courage is like that, in that we can't judge other people's courage by our own experience. And so for some people, I think courage looks like just getting out of bed in the morning. Like, I marvel at people when they've shared their story with me, that they're functional in any way, that they get out of. If I had been through what they went through, I would be curled up in the fetal position in a corner of a room. I know who I am. I know that's all I could muster. And so when people get up every day and actually engage life, even if they can only do it for an hour, to me, that's courageous. And then there are other people, like I've seen with you, stand up and speak truth to power, and that's courage too. And I think that it's wherever in your particularity, where you are in your journey, where you are with courage, when you just take that step and do the next right thing, you do that thing that's in your heart to do, that thing that's for you, for your life, for your journey. I think that's what courage is.
Wow. I love that so much. I really do. And I see you as a courageous person as well. I know it's not easy to be a clergy person who has these radical ideas and notions that we should protect people. But I do know that also takes courage, and we thank you for that. Everybody, Brian Metzger, you've been so wonderful. Thank you for being on the show. And yeah, we definitely appreciate you. And I know afterwards people are gonna be fun to check out where you are online. I know you didn't have a big social media thing that you wanted me to share or anything like that, but I think people probably find their way to you. And yeah, I think this is just really healing and beautiful. So thank you so much for your time and
Thank
for
you.
your candor.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. A couple of quick things. If you are not following us on social media, you can do so at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We've got TikTok, YouTube, all the different places. But I want to tell you about something really special, something that can be a real game changer we have found for survivors, and that is our daily text messages. People have reached back out to us and told us how empowering these text messages are. I've been blown away. But basically, these are text messages that we send out for free Monday through Friday. They're written by survivors for survivors, and they are just words of encouragement in the morning. And all you have to do to receive them is text the word courage to the number on the screen, which is 917-809-7311. That's 917-809-7311. And when you do that, you'll be signed up for the list. We've literally had people tell us that they've been in such a dark place, but the text messages are the things that kept them going. Phone number is not shared with other people. You simply get it from us. But the perk is if you do respond back, and there's no pressure to respond back to each message, somebody actually responds to you. And so it can be a really good way to feel supported on the daily as you wake up in the morning. Again, thank you all so much for tuning in. If you haven't joined our Facebook group, it's a really great place. Of course, we have our public Facebook page, but in our Facebook group, we share a lot of really cool discussions. And you can also see where you can find that at the link below, facebook.com/groups/courage365.org. I am sending you all so much love. Thank you for tuning in. And as always, live with courage.